My sister collapsed from her chronic pain just as I announced my promotion. Everyone rushed to help, thinking it was sudden, but I had recorded it 20 minutes earlier. When I showed the video, the truth came out, leaving everyone shocked and speechless. Imagine spending 15 years watching your own sister systematically destroy your life, twisting every truth until you became the villain in your own story. But then, one unforgettable night, I finally got to watch her perfect world of lies crumble, and the sound of her real agony was the sweetest symphony I'd ever heard. You see, this story, my story, it really began with a miracle, or at least, that's how my parents always framed it. My little sister, Emma, she was born 2 months early, tiny and fragile, apparently bluer than a smuff, fighting for every single breath. For the first 3 years of her life, she was practically glued to tubes and machines, a constant fixture in our local hospital. And, naturally, my parents were beyond protective. She was their little fighter, their fragile miracle. They'd spend every waking moment by her side, buying her every single toy her heart desired, and, well, they'd demand I ditch my own friends, my own childhood, to babysit her. At first, I understood. I really did. She was my chronically ill baby sister, and that's what good big sisters do, right? But then, she started to get older. She got healthier. The tubes, the machines, they became a distant memory. She could live a normal life. But by then, it was too late. She had already learned a crucial, devastating lesson: being sick got her whatever she wanted. Whether it was the latest toy, endless sympathy, or all of my parents' undivided attention, all she had to do was suffer. It started subtly, insidiously. Her headaches, for instance, they'd mysteriously flare up the moment homework came out. Like clockwork. My parents, bless their naive hearts, would immediately swoop in, whisk away the dreaded textbooks, and replace them with a giant bowl of ice cream. Homework forgotten, Emma beaming. By the time Emma was 11, and I was 16, she had perfected this dark art. She was a master manipulator, and what truly gnawed at me was how her pain seemed to strike only during my moments. The day I finally made varsity soccer, a dream I'd worked my entire life for. Suddenly, Emma developed these mysterious, excruciating stomach cramps that demanded my parents leave my very first game early. Then, when I got my acceptance letter to my dream college, a moment of pure, unadulterated joy, she dramatically collapsed during my celebration dinner. We spent the entire night in the emergency room, only for doctors to find, predictably, absolutely nothing wrong. The worst part, the truly infuriating part, was the smirk. That tiny, almost imperceptible smirk she'd shoot my way when our parents weren't looking. It was a silent, venomous victory dance. I even caught her, once, practicing her pain faces in the mirror, contorting her features, perfecting the art of innocent suffering. I tried to tell my parents. To open their eyes. But Emma was always one step ahead. She'd already spun a tale about how I was just jealous of the attention she needed because of her fragile condition. And they believed her. Every single time. But then, she went too far. My first serious boyfriend, Jake, he lasted 8 blissful months before Emma's poison seeped into our relationship. She fabricated these horrifying fake screenshots, messages where I supposedly called her a faker, wished she would just die already. It was brutal, heart-wrenching. The breakup happened at a coffee shop, a public humiliation. Jake just slid his phone across the table, his eyes filled with disgust, showing me Emma's carefully constructed evidence. He said he couldn't be with someone who treated their sick sister so cruelly. And as if to twist the knife deeper, Emma texted me a selfie moments later, smug and triumphant, wearing the hoodie Jake had given me. That, my friends, was my absolute breaking point. I'd watched her, for 5 agonizing years, chip away at my life, stealing my joy, my relationships, my very identity. But this was war. Something snapped inside me, replaced by a cold, calculating resolve. I started watching her. Not casually, not with annoyance, but with an obsessive, forensic intensity no one had ever applied to Emma before. And I noticed a pattern. A meticulous, almost scientific pattern. Every single time her mysterious pain struck, she always, without fail, clutched her right side. Head, stomach, kidney, didn't matter. Always the right. She always called specifically for Mom. Her pain rating was invariably an 8, 9, or a dramatic 10. And here's the kicker, she always made a full recovery in exactly 2 to 3 hours. Just long enough, you see, to completely obliterate whatever important moment I had planned. Once I had this data, once I saw the gears turning in her twisted little machine, I knew. I knew exactly what I had to do. I developed my plan. And it was going to be glorious. Last Sunday, it all went down. And trust me, it was even better than I could have possibly imagined. It was our monthly family dinner, you know, the usual chaos with all the aunts, uncles, and cousins squeezed around the oversized dining table. 20 minutes before the whole family descended, I slipped upstairs to the bathroom. My heart was pounding, a strange mix of nerves and exhilarating anticipation. I pulled out my phone and recorded a video. In that video, my voice calm but laced with an almost terrifying certainty, I explained the fake announcement I was about to make, a fabricated promotion at work. And then, I predicted it all. Every single step of Emma's performance. I said she would wait for the applause to die down, then she'd grab her right side, whimper for mom. She'd rate her pain as an 8, 9, or 10. She'd immediately need to lie down, and, true to form, she'd eventually ask mom to take her to the hospital if the pain didn't magically improve within 20 minutes. My hands were shaking a little as I hit stop, but my resolve was steel. Back downstairs, I waited for the perfect moment. Then, I stood up, clinked my glass, and got everyone's attention. Taking a deep breath, I announced it, I'd just been promoted, with a huge raise. The reaction was exactly what I'd hoped for. Everyone erupted in applause, a wave of genuine joy and congratulations washing over me. Uncles clapped me on the back, cousins hugged me tight, and my mom had tears of pride shining in her eyes. The dining room echoed with cheers, laughter, and jokes about me finally being able to pay my own bills. Uncle Roberto, always the joker, quipped about me becoming the rich niece, while Grandma was already planning how I could help with her medication costs. I kept a wide, triumphant smile plastered on my face, waving and thanking everyone, but my gaze, my true focus, was locked onto Emma. She was at the far end of the long table, sandwiched between my cousin Marcus and Aunt Sandra, absently poking at her mashed potatoes. For a fleeting second, she almost looked genuinely happy for me. But I knew her. Oh, I knew her too well. I saw it. The shift. Subtle, as always, but undeniable. A tiny, almost imperceptible contraction around her eyes, a slight stiffening of her shoulders. Her gaze swept across the table, taking in the scene, all eyes on me, the genuine excitement for my achievement, my moment in the spotlight. And then, it began. First, she simply stopped eating. Her fork clinked softly against her plate, a sound barely audible above the celebratory chatter, noticed only by a few nearby. Aunt Sandra, ever observant, leaned in and asked, "Emma, everything okay there?" Emma just shook her head, forcing one of those brave, fragile smiles, the kind she perfected to appear stoic despite her agony. I kept up my charade, chatting with Uncle Pedro, shamelessly inventing details about responsibilities I didn't have and a salary that didn't exist. But a crucial part of my brain was counting. 3, 2, 1. Like a Swiss watch, her hand flew to the right side of her abdomen. Her first moan was a barely audible sigh, a soft sound designed to be just slightly muffled by the general conversation. But Emma, the seasoned performer, knew exactly how to project her voice to sound like she was trying, valiantly, to hide her suffering. Cousin Marcus, sitting next to her, paused mid-story about his new job. "Emma, everything okay there?" he asked, leaning in, concern etching his face. "It's nothing," she murmured, but loud enough for at least half the table to hear. Her voice, perfectly calibrated, held that specific tone, brave, yet laced with a vulnerability that always melted hearts. "Just a little pain." And just like that, the show I had witnessed countless times before, began. Aunt Sandra immediately swiveled her entire body towards Emma, abandoning her conversation with Grandpa about politics mid-sentence. "What kind of pain, dear? Where does it hurt?" Emma curved slightly in her chair, a perfectly calibrated performance. "Not too dramatic, that would seem fake. Just enough to convey genuine discomfort. It's here, on the right side," she whispered, pressing her hand against her body. It came out of nowhere. I watched, a cold observer, as the shift happened in real time. Conversations dwindled, voices lowering, then silencing. One by one, every head turned towards Emma. My promotion, the joyous news that had been the epicenter of attention just minutes ago, vanished into the background, swallowed whole by that automatic, well-practiced wave of family concern that always enveloped my sister. Mom, who'd been laughing beside me at one of Uncle Carlos's stories, suddenly froze, mid-chuckle. That familiar expression, the one I knew so well, began to contort her face, pure, maternal panic. Emma knew precisely how to invoke it, with surgical precision. "Emma, what happened, my love?" Mom was already halfway out of her chair, her napkin fluttering to the floor. Emma lifted her gaze to Mom, always to Mom first, never to Dad. I'd seen that pattern for years. "Mom, it's hurting quite a bit," she whispered, her voice trembling with just the right amount of fragility. Not too much, not too little. Enough to sound genuine, but never so much that it seemed theatrical. Dad, predictably, snapped into problem-solving mode. What kind of pain? Cramps? Burning? Stabbing? Emma closed her eyes, as if concentrating on the specifics of her agony. It's a dull pain, she answered, her voice strained, but really strong, and it's getting worse. Grandma crossed herself. Uncle Roberto's brow furrowed with deep concern. Cousin Carla was already rummaging in her purse, asking if anyone had any medicine. The attention of the entire room had completely drained away from me, flowing towards Emma like water down a sink. I kept my smile, even participated in the worried speculation about Emma's mysterious ailment. But inside, I was utterly captivated, watching the machine work. It was like watching a master conductor direct a symphony. Each moan, each subtly pained expression, each perfectly chosen word, all designed to elicit the exact desired reaction. On a scale of 1 to 10. Dad asked, already reaching for his car keys on the sideboard. This question, a sacred ritual in our family, had been uttered countless times over the years. Emma paused, a brilliant, calculated beat, as if truly evaluating the intensity. An immediate answer might seem rehearsed, after all. It's an 8, she finally murmured, her voice sounding weaker. Maybe 9. Of course. It was never less than an 8. And never a full 10, that would be too dramatic, too obvious. Always that sweet spot between 8 and 9, alarming enough to cause panic, but not so exaggerated as to raise suspicions. I watched the entire family dynamic reorient itself around Emma's suffering. Aunt Sandra launched into a story about her own kidney stones. Grandma mumbled about how much her poor girl had suffered since she was a baby. Cousin Julia was already suggesting appendicitis. My promotion. A distant, forgotten memory in under 5 minutes. Emma curved a little more, bringing her second hand to her right side, as if to reinforce the first. Mom, she whispered, just loud enough for everyone to hear, I think I need to lie down. And then she did it. That thing that always made my blood boil, made me want to scream until my throat was raw. She looked directly at me. Just for a second. When she was absolutely sure no one else was looking. And she smiled. A small, almost imperceptible curve of her lips. But it was there. The smile of someone who had just scored a winning goal. Maybe we should take her to the hospital, Mom said, now fully on her feet, panic rising in her voice. Sarah, can you drive? I'm too nervous. It was at that exact moment that something inside me snapped. It wasn't just anger anymore. It was something colder. Sharper. More calculated. Everyone was on their feet, moving with that familiar, frantic urgency, ready to transform what should have been my triumphant night into yet another frantic dash to the emergency room. Another endless night spent in sterile waiting rooms, while doctors ran expensive tests that would, of course, show absolutely nothing. I rose too, but instead of reaching for my purse, my hand went straight for my phone. Wait, I said, my voice surprisingly calm, betraying none of the earthquake raging inside me. Before we all go rushing to the hospital, there's something you all need to see. Emma finally looked at me, and for the very first time, I saw it. A flicker. A hint of suspicion, maybe even a sliver of fear, darting through her carefully constructed mask of suffering. But she was too deep into her performance to stop now. Sarah, this isn't the time for this, she choked out, her voice still weak, still filled with pain. I'm in a lot of pain. A cold smile touched my lips. Oh, I know exactly how much pain you're feeling, I replied, unlocking my phone, my thumb hovering over the screen. And I know exactly when it's going to pass. Aunt Sandra frowned, confusion clouding her face. Sarah, what do you mean by that? I held my phone up, my finger poised. I recorded a video 20 minutes ago, I announced, my voice cutting through the remaining whispers. You're all going to want to watch this. Emma went completely, utterly still. Her hand remained plastered to her right side, her face still contorted with pain, but something profound had shifted. It was as if she suddenly felt the ground give way beneath her feet, but couldn't quite grasp why. What video? Mom asked, her voice a mix of lingering concern for Emma and growing curiosity about my bizarre behavior. My eyes found Emma's, and I saw the exact moment she fully understood that something was terribly, irrevocably wrong. Her eyes widened slightly, a flash of pure terror. But she couldn't abandon her act now. Not in front of the entire family. A video that's going to explain a lot, I said, and with a deep breath, I pressed play. My voice, clear and firm, filled the stunned silence from the phone's speaker. It's 6:40 p.m. on Sunday. In 20 minutes, I'm going to make a false announcement about a promotion at work during family dinner. When I do this, Emma will wait for the applause to finish. Then, she'll hold the right side of her body and call for Mom. She'll rate the pain as an 8 or 9. She'll ask to lie down, and if she follows the pattern, she'll suggest going to the hospital in exactly 15 minutes. The silence in the room was deafening. So dense, I could almost hear the frantic tick-tock of the wall clock. All eyes, now wide with disbelief and dawning horror, snapped to Emma. She was utterly petrified, her hand still glued to her right side as if superglued there, frozen in her perfect, pathetic pose. She always holds the right side, my recorded voice continued, mercilessly. No matter what type of pain it is, head, stomach, kidney, always the right side. Always calls specifically for Mom first. And she always recovers in 2 to 3 hours. Just enough time to ruin any important moment of mine. Grandma was the first to find her voice, a shaky whisper. Emma, is this true? Emma tried to rally, a desperate attempt to salvage her act, but I could see the sheer panic blooming in her eyes. I don't know what Sarah is talking about, she stammered, trying to inject that suffering tone back into her voice. I'm really in pain. Don't you believe me? I'm not done yet, I said, pausing the video, my voice cutting like a knife. That was just the appetizer. I navigated to the next folder on my phone, a meticulously organized collection I'd been compiling for months, years even. Do you want to see what really happened at my high school graduation? Sarah. Stop this. Emma hissed, but her voice had lost all its theatrical fragility. Now, it was sharp, almost a threat. I played the next video. It was a recording from the school's security camera, a favor from a friend in administration. The image flickered to life, showing Emma in a deserted hallway near the water fountains, just 5 minutes before the ceremony. She was completely alone, checking her phone. Then, she put it away, scanned around to ensure absolute privacy, and began to practice. There, in that empty hallway, my sister was rehearsing expressions of pain. She frowned, clutched her chest, made various grimaces into the reflective glass of a window. She was literally, chillingly, rehearsing which pain face would be most convincing. My God, Aunt Sandra murmured, her hand flying to cover her mouth, her eyes wide with shock. Wait, there's more, I said, moving to the next file. Remember when Jake broke up with me? When he said I was cruel to my sick sister? Emma went bone white. Sarah, don't. These are the original messages she sent to Jake, pretending to be me. I showed the screenshots, recovered from her phone's backup, another favor from a tech-savvy friend. Look at the dates and times. She waited for me to leave the house, used my computer, created fake accounts. The messages were cruel, saying horrible things about Emma that I would never think, let alone write. But they were written in my style, with my slang. She used details only someone who knew me intimately would know to include. Dad took my phone with trembling hands, his face growing darker, more enraged with each scrolling message. She even researched my class schedules to know exactly when I wouldn't be home, I continued, my voice steady. She created a fake Facebook profile with my photo, added Jake as a friend, and started sending these messages, pretending to be me. When he confronted me, she feigned shock, claiming I must have let someone use my computer. Emma, Mom said, her voice a broken whisper, tears already welling in her eyes. This can't be true. But it is, I said, a dark, chilling satisfaction washing over me as I watched Emma's meticulously built house of cards begin to crumble, brick by agonizing brick. And there's more. So much more. I moved to the next file, an audio recording I'd secretly made just last month. This is Emma on the phone with her friend, Beatrice, last week. Emma's voice, clear and chillingly casual, resonated from my phone. It's really easy, BA. You just need to know the right spots. Mom gets desperate if I say it's a headache on the right side. But if I say it's in the stomach, she takes longer to react. And it always works better when Sarah is having a good day. Then everyone feels sorry for me and gets irritated with her for being insensitive. A faint laugh, Beatrice's, echoed in the recording. You're terrible, Emma. But your sister really is kind of annoying anyway. She thinks she's better than everyone. Emma's voice continued, a venomous purr. She was always the favorite. Always had everything easy. At least when I pretend to be sick, I manage to get them to pay attention to me, too. And it's fun to see her getting frustrated. The silence that followed was absolute, deadly. Emma was white as paper, trembling uncontrollably. And this time, the trembling was real. Emma, Grandma said, her voice thick with a disappointment that sliced through the air like a razor. How could you? There's more, I stated, utterly relentless. Do you want to see the video of when she fainted at my 18th birthday party? This time, Emma actually tried to get up, a desperate, frantic scramble to escape. But Uncle Roberto, his face grim, gently but firmly held her by the shoulders. Stay there, Emma. I think you need to hear this. The video played, showing Emma in our backyard, hidden behind the barbecue grill, about 10 minutes before making her grand, dramatic entrance at my party. She was testing different ways to faint on the grass, meticulous, checking which angle would be most convincing, least dangerous. My voice, recorded alongside the footage, narrated clinically, she practiced for 15 minutes. She tested falling sideways, falling forward, falling backward. She chose the side because the grass was softer there. Cousin Carla made a sound that was half shocked laughter, half a groan of sheer disbelief. Emma, this is sick. It's not sick, I said, finally lowering my phone. The weight of years of silent suffering was in my voice. It's calculated. Systematic. She didn't just manipulate, she turned it into an art form. Emma finally exploded. Okay, damn it. You want the truth. I faked it. I faked it a few times, yes, but you don't understand. Tears began to stream down her face, but these weren't her theatrical tears. These were tears of raw anger, of frustrated fury, of someone caught utterly red-handed. Do you think it's easy being perfect Sarah's sister? Sarah the smart one, Sarah the popular one, Sarah who never does anything wrong. Do you know what it's like to grow up in her shadow? So you decided to sabotage me. I replied, my voice dangerously calm. To destroy my relationships, ruin my important moments, make everyone think I'm a cruel and insensitive sister. Because you had everything. Emma screamed, all pretense of being sick completely abandoned now. Her voice was hoarse with rage. You always had everything. And me? I was just the sister who almost died as a baby. The only way you'd pay attention to me was when I was sick. But you weren't sick, Dad said, his voice low, heavy with a disappointment that was almost unbearable. You were lying for years. And sabotaging your sister's life in the process. Mom, tears streaming down her own face now, looked at Emma with utter heartbreak. Emma, how could you be so cruel? Cruel. Emma laughed, a bitter, broken sound. You want to know what's cruel? It's growing up watching your sister get congratulated for just breathing while you need to almost die for someone to even notice you. You were never. Almost dying. I exploded, years of suppressed fury finally erupting. At least not in the last 5 years. You were acting, manipulating, lying. Because it worked, she screamed back, defiant even now. Because it was the only thing that ever worked. Uncle Roberto slowly rose from his chair, his discomfort palpable. I think I'd better leave, he mumbled, trying to slip away from the toxic scene. No. I said, my voice firm, unwavering. Stay. All of you. Because there's one more thing. Emma looked at me, pure terror now etched on her face. Sarah, don't. Please tell them about the money, I said, my voice dropping, low and sharp as a blade. What money? Mom asked, her brow furrowed in confusion. Emma remained silent, but her expression was confession enough. The money you gave her to buy medicine, I continued, looking at my parents, whose faces were a mixture of shock and dawning realization. Those expensive medicines the doctor supposedly prescribed. The ones she claimed health insurance didn't cover. Dad went absolutely livid. Emma, tell me you didn't. She spent it on makeup, clothes, going out with friends, I stated, my voice unwavering. I have the bank statements. I have photos of the purchases she posted on Instagram. You gave her over 3,000 reis in the last 6 months. 3,000 reis. Grandma repeated, incredulous, her voice trembling. Which she spent on everything except medicine, I completed, my gaze fixed on Emma. Because she didn't need any medicine. Because she was never sick. Emma began to sob uncontrollably, her body racked with tremors. But now, no one moved to comfort her. No one reached out. It was as if an invisible, chilling barrier had suddenly materialized around her. 15 years, Mom whispered, her voice barely audible, tears streaming freely down her face. 15 years believing, worrying, canceling plans, losing nights of sleep, and I lost 15 years of my life, I added, my voice cracking with years of pent-up emotion. 15 years being treated as the cruel and insensitive sister. 15 years watching my important moments get destroyed. 15 years being blamed for not having enough patience with the sick sister. Emma finally lifted her tear-streaked face, makeup smudged and ruined. Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Now you're sorry. I said, a bitter, hollow laugh escaping my lips. Now that you've been caught. Aunt Sandra shook her head, slowly pushing herself away from the table. Emma, I don't know what to say. This is very serious. You all know now, I said, my gaze sweeping around the shocked, silent table. You all know what kind of person she really is. You know what she did to me, to this family, for years. Emma tried again to get up, to flee, to escape the crushing weight of her exposure. But Mom, her face etched with a mix of anguish and steel, held her firmly by the arm. No, Mom said, her voice firmer, more resolute than I had heard in years. You're going to stay here. You're going to listen to everything. You're going to face what you did. And it was at that moment that I knew. I had succeeded. This wasn't just about exposure anymore. This was about justice. Finally, after all these agonizing years, the truth had not only come to light, it had exploded like a supernova. But I still wasn't finished. There was one last card to play. One final, devastating blow. And this, I knew, would finish Emma once and for all. There's one more thing, I said, pulling up a chair and deliberately, slowly, sitting down directly in front of Emma. The last piece of the puzzle. Emma looked at me, her eyes red and swollen, all the fight utterly drained from her. Sarah, please. They understand now. No, they don't understand everything yet, I replied, picking up my phone again. My voice was a chilling whisper. Because you still don't know about Mike. The name landed like a bomb in the room. Emma went utterly white, her jaw dropping open. Mike? Your ex-boyfriend? Mom asked, confused, her eyes still red from crying. But you broke up because he moved to Denver. No, I said, my eyes fixed, unblinking, on Emma. We broke up because my dear little sister hit on him. And he fell for her. Emma started trembling violently. Sarah, don't. Please don't show them. Show them the messages you sent him, Emma, I said, my voice cold, devoid of any warmth. The photos you sent. What photos? Dad's voice, now dangerously low, cut through the tense air. Emma here found out that Mike was going to propose to me, I continued, savoring each word, watching her agony. He had told me he wanted to buy a ring. And our dear Emma, she just couldn't let that pass, could she? Emma was practically hyperventilating, her entire body shaking. So, she started sending messages to him, I continued, my voice gaining power with each damning word. First, pretending she was worried about me, saying I wasn't ready for marriage. Then, the photos started. I held up my phone, displaying the screenshots I'd meticulously extracted from Mike's phone before our breakup. Lingerie photos. Provocative photos. Messages filled with sickening confessions of how she'd always had a crush on him. Aunt Sandra gasped, a sound of pure disgust. Emma, that's so low. And it worked, I pressed on, a bitter, humorless laugh escaping me. Mike started responding. They started meeting in secret. She would pretend to have medical appointments just to go to his apartment. Oh my God, Grandma murmured, her hands flying to cover her face in shame and disbelief. But you know what the most pathetic part is? I scoffed, my voice dripping with scorn. She only gave up on him when she saw I was actually thriving even after the breakup. When she saw I got that incredible job, that I was happy alone. That I wasn't destroyed like she expected. Emma finally found her voice, but it was just a broken whisper. Sarah, you what, Emma? I exploded. You're sorry. You were confused. You were sick. I pushed my chair back, rising, and stood directly over her, years of suppressed anger, betrayal, and pain finally finding its voice, its righteous fury. No. You simply can't stand to see me happy. You can't stand to see me have something you don't. You want to be me, Emma. But here's the truth that's going to hurt more than any lie you've ever told. The room was plunged into an absolute, breathless silence. All eyes, shattered and reeling, were fixed on me. You'll never be me. You'll never even come close. You can't even be the dirt under my shoe that I stepped on last week. Emma sobbed, a pathetic, desperate sound, but I wasn't finished. Because you know what the difference between us is. When I want something, I work for it. I deserve what I have. You only know how to destroy, to lie, to manipulate. You're an empty person desperately trying to steal someone else's life because you don't have the courage to build your own. Sarah, please, Emma whimpered. Please, nothing. I screamed, the sound echoing through the dining room. You destroyed 3 of my relationships. 3. Jake, with the false messages. Tyler, when you lied that I was cheating on him, and now Mike. 3 men I loved. That you drove away from me because you can't stand to see me happy. Dad stood up, his face contorted with a mixture of anger and profound grief. Emma, is this true? Emma couldn't even speak, she just cried, shaking her head uselessly. And you know what Mike told me when I confronted him? I continued, mercilessly. He said you told him I never really loved him, that I was just using him until I found someone better. That you knew the real side of me. That's not true. Emma finally shrieked, a desperate, raw sound. Of course it's not true. I exploded back. But you planted the seed of doubt in his head. You seduced him when he was vulnerable. You destroyed the most serious relationship I ever had because you can't stand that someone loves me more than they love you. Uncle Roberto, shaking his head, pushed completely away from the table. I can't anymore. Emma, this is sick. Sick is an understatement, Aunt Sandra added, her voice filled with revulsion. This is psychopathic. One by one, people began to stir, began to rise, ready to escape the nightmare. But before they could leave, I raised my voice again, demanding their attention. Wait. I want all of you to look at her closely. Emma was hunched over in her chair, a pathetic, sobbing mess, crying like a child. Look closely at the girl you protected. That you spoiled. That you let torture me for years. Look at the monster you created. Sarah, Mom tried to interrupt, her voice weak. No. I cut her off, my voice sharp, unforgiving. You're going to hear this. You're going to hear everything. I turned back to Emma, my gaze like a laser. Do you want to know why you'll never be me? Because I have something you'll never have. I have character. I have dignity. When I make mistakes, I own up to them. When I want something, I earn it with honor. You're a pathetic faker who needs to steal crumbs from my life just to feel relevant. You're so small, so insignificant, that the only way you find to exist is by destroying other people. Emma was shaking violently now, uncontrollably. And now everyone knows, I declared, my voice resonating with finality. Everyone sees you for what you really are. A liar. A manipulator. An empty person who spends her whole life trying to be someone she'll never be. I turned to the family, my voice chillingly calm. And you? You who always took her side. Who always made me feel like the villain. I hope you're proud, because this is the daughter, the granddaughter, the niece you raised. Grandma was crying openly. Oh, Sarah, we didn't know. Of course you didn't know, I replied, my voice cold, devoid of warmth. Because you never wanted to know. It was easier to believe I was the bad sister than to admit your little darling was a demon. I looked at Emma one last time. She seemed to have physically shrunk in the chair, a small, pathetic shadow of her former manipulative self. Congratulations, Emma. You finally got what you always wanted. You're the center of attention. Everyone is looking at you. I paused dramatically, letting the weight of my words sink in. Too bad it's for all the wrong reasons. I grabbed my purse, the worn leather of familiar comfort in my trembling hand, and turned towards the door. But before I stepped through, I paused, turning my head slightly back towards Emma. Oh, and Emma, I said, my voice cutting through the stunned silence. When you're alone in your room tonight, crying about how your life fell apart, I want you to remember something. I met her red, swollen eyes one last time. You did this to yourself. Every single lie, every manipulation, every moment of pure, calculated evil. You chose this. And now, you're going to live with the consequences. Where are you going? Mom cried, her voice cracking, tears still streaming down her face. Away from here, I replied, my voice steady, imbued with a newfound strength. Away from this toxic family, this sick dynamic, and especially, away from her. I pointed vaguely in Emma's direction, not even needing to look at her. I'm going where I should have gone years ago. I'm going to build a life where people like her can't reach me. The door slammed shut behind me, the resounding thud echoing through the shattered silence of the dining room. But not before I heard it. Emma's scream. Not from fake pain this time. Not the practiced whimper of a victim. This was a primal, gut-wrenching shriek of real agony. The agony of finally, irrevocably, having to face who she truly was. And for the first time in 15 years, the sound of her pain didn't make me feel guilty. It made me feel free.